Hello, and welcome to Disturbing Creepy Tales. In this video, I'll be recounting the scary and horrifying experiences of 3 real high school horror stories. Before we begin, leave a comment letting me know where in the world you are listening to this. This is a fun way to build and connect this amazing community. Alright, let's get to it. It was just another regular day at school, or so I thought. The morning was typical: classes, friends, and the usual chatter in the hallways. I had no idea that this day would change my life forever. The bell rang, signaling the end of my 3rd period. I had been holding it in since the start of class, so I headed straight for the bathroom. The hallway was crawling with students, everyone on their way to their next class or chatting with friends before the next bell. I pushed through the crowd and finally reached the bathroom door. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The bathroom was empty, which was a relief. I walked over to one of the stalls and locked the door behind me. As I sat there, I thought about the math test I had later in the day. Numbers and formulas swirled in my head. I was lost in my thoughts, oblivious to everything around me. I finished and stepped out of the stall, walking over to the sink to wash my hands. I looked at myself in the mirror, straightening my hair and adjusting my shirt. I was about to turn off the faucet when the bathroom door creaked open. I didn't think much of it at first. It was a school bathroom after all, and students were constantly coming and going. But then I heard footsteps echoing against the tiled floor, getting louder and louder. My heart began to race. For some reason, I started to feel really creeped out. I glanced in the mirror and saw him, a boy I recognized from a few of my classes. He was always quiet, kept to himself mostly, but there was something different about him now. He had a strange, unsettling look on his face. I turned around, my hands still wet, and that's when I saw it. He was holding a knife in his hand. Panic set in. I tried to move, to run, but my body felt like it was frozen in place. He stepped closer, raising the knife. My mind was screaming at me to do something, anything, but fear had taken over. I stumbled back, crashing into the sink. The cold, hard porcelain dug into my back, and I winced in pain. The next few moments were a blur. He lunged at me, the knife slashing through the air. I threw my hands up, trying to protect myself, but it was no use. The blade sliced through my skin, and then I felt pain exploding in my side. I could hear my screams echoing in the bathroom. I fell to the ground and my vision was blurring. The boy stood over me, just staring at me with the creepiest look I've ever seen. He raised the knife again, and I knew I had to do something. With every ounce of strength I had left, I kicked at him, my foot connecting with his leg. He stumbled back and dropped the knife. It caught him off guard, but gave me just enough time to scramble to my feet. I ran for the door, my side screaming in pain with every step. I could hear his footsteps as he chased after me. I burst through the bathroom door, crashing into the crowded hallway. Students turned to look, their eyes widening in shock as they saw me. I kept running. My vision felt like it was going in and out. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to get away. Finally, I reached the main office. I crashed through the door, collapsing onto the floor. Everything was a blur, voices shouting, hands grabbing me. I felt someone lift me, carrying me to safety. I passed out and don't remember anything after that. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital bed. My side throbbed with pain. a constant reminder of what had happened. I learned later that they had caught the boy. He was taken away and they had recovered the weapon. The school was in shock, everyone trying to make sense of what had happened. I spent days in the hospital, recovering from my injuries. The physical wounds would heal, the doctors assured me, but the emotional scars would take much longer to deal with. In that hospital bed, I replayed the events over and over in my mind, and I couldn't help but wonder why. Why had he done it? What had driven him to attack me? There were no answers, only questions. Eventually, I returned to school. The bathroom where it happened was off limits. I could barely even walk past it. Life slowly returned to normal, but I was different. I still carry the weight of that day with me, a constant reminder of how quickly life can change. Moving to a new town in the middle of high school was the last thing I wanted. Leaving behind my old friends and familiar places made the move even harder. But my dad got a new job and there was no way around it. So I found myself in this new place, trying to blend in and make new friends. The first few days at my new school were rough. I felt like everyone was watching me, judging the new kid. But then I met Sam. Sam was friendly, always smiling, and really nice to me. It felt really good to have someone to talk to during lunch and between classes. He seemed like a regular guy, always joking around and making everyone laugh. We quickly became friends, hanging out after school and on weekends. He introduced me to his group of friends, and soon I started to feel more at home. Everything seemed normal at first, but then Sam started sharing things that made me feel uneasy. One afternoon, we were hanging out at his place. His parents weren't home, and we were just watching TV and eating snacks. Out of nowhere, he pulled out a photo album and started showing me pictures of his family. I didn't think much of it until he got to a picture of a girl about our age. "That's my sister Cassie," he said. "She died a few years ago." I didn't know what to say. I mumbled something about being sorry for his loss, but he just kept flipping through the album, showing more pictures of Cassie. There were pictures of her playing in the yard, smiling at birthday parties, and then pictures of her looking pale and sick in a hospital bed. It was uncomfortable, but I didn't want to be rude. After that day, Sam started talking about Cassie a lot. He told me how she died of a rare disease and how much he missed her. I tried to be supportive, but it felt like there was something off about the way he talked about her. It was almost obsessive. Things took a darker turn when Sam started sharing other things. He began talking about death and violence, often in a very casual way. He would mention disturbing news stories and describe the details with the kind of fascination that made my skin crawl. He also started talking about some of our classmates in a really unsettling way, mentioning how he would like to mess with them or worse. I tried to distance myself from Sam after that. I made excuses to avoid hanging out and started spending more time with other friends. But Sam didn't take it well. He would text me constantly, asking why I was ignoring him and getting angry when I didn't respond right away. It was stressful, but I didn't know what to do. One day, I found a note in my locker. It was from Sam, saying he knew I was avoiding him and that it wasn't a good idea. He mentioned my new friends and how something bad could happen to them if I didn't start hanging out with him again. The note scared me, but I didn't want to involve anyone else. I was afraid of what people would think, and I thought maybe I could handle it on my own. I was wrong. The threats became more frequent and more direct. Sam would corner me in the halls, saying things like, "You don't want to see your friends get hurt, do you?" Or, "I can make your life a living hell." It was terrifying, but I still didn't tell anyone. What if no one believed me? I was trying to fit in, and I didn't want to believe that Sam could actually hurt someone. One afternoon, when I was walking home from school, Sam pulled up in his truck and demanded I get in. I refused, but he got out and started yelling at me, causing a scene. I ran to a nearby store and called my parents to come get me. They could tell something was wrong, and I finally broke down and told them everything. My parents immediately called the police. When they searched Sam's truck, they found a notebook with a list of names, a kind of hit list. My name was on it, along with the names of several other students. There were also detailed plans about how he intended to hurt each of us. The police arrested Sam, and he was taken into custody. The whole ordeal was a nightmare. I couldn't believe how close I had come to a seriously dangerous situation. I still had to face the whispers and stares from my classmates and the fear that someone else might be out there with similar thoughts. In the end, Sam was sent to a juvenile detention center. The whole town was shaken by what had happened, and it took a long time for things to feel even remotely normal again. I learned a lot from that experience. I learned to trust my instincts and to speak up when something doesn't feel right. I also learned that sometimes the people we think we know the best can hide the darkest secrets. It's a lesson I'll never forget. I remember the night like it was yesterday, even though it's been years. The night my boyfriend, Ryan, disappeared. We were at a party, just a typical high school party, nothing special. It was at Brett's house, and everyone was there. The music was loud, people were drinking, and we were all just having a good time. Ryan and I were both juniors in high school and had been dating for about a year. He was the type of guy who made everyone laugh, always the life of the party. We were having fun, drinking, and dancing. I had a bit too much to drink, and I could feel myself getting lightheaded. Ryan was right there with me, matching me drink for drink. As the night went on, I started feeling worse. My head was spinning, and I needed to lie down. I told Ryan I was going to find a place to rest, and he said he'd come with me. We found an empty room upstairs, and I collapsed onto the bed. I could hear the party still raging downstairs, the muffled sounds of laughter and music. I must have passed out because the next thing I remember was waking up to silence. The party was over and the house was quiet. Ryan wasn't there. I sat up, my head pounding, and tried to remember what happened. I vaguely recalled Ryan shaking me, calling my name, but I was too out of it to respond. I started to panic. I stumbled downstairs, calling out for Ryan, but there was no answer. The house was empty. Everyone had left. I grabbed my phone and called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent him a text, then another, but there was no response. I started to think back to the last moments I could remember. Ryan was shaking me, trying to wake me up. I must have looked really bad because he seemed scared. I just couldn't recall much after that, no matter how hard I tried. I called my friends one by one, asking if they had seen Ryan. No one had. Everyone said he left the party alone, looking freaked out. I tried to piece together what happened, but it didn't make sense. Ryan wouldn't just leave me like that. Days later, there was still no sign of Ryan. The police had got involved, and there were several search parties looking for Ryan, but nothing turned up. It was like he vanished into thin air. I kept going over that night in my head, trying to figure out what went wrong. I felt guilty, like it was my fault. If I hadn't passed out, maybe none of this would have happened. I remember sitting in Ryan's room, surrounded by his things, trying to feel close to him. His mom was a wreck, and his dad was barely holding it together. They blamed themselves too. The days turned into weeks, and still no sign of Ryan. The police said they were still looking, but it seemed like their hope was fading. People started to move on, but I couldn't. I kept thinking about that night, replaying it in my mind. What if he was out there, scared and alone? What if he needed help? I spent hours online, reading about missing persons cases, trying to find any clue that might lead me to him. I joined forums, talked to people who had gone through similar experiences, but it was always the same story. The person was just gone, no trace left behind. One night, I decided to retrace our steps from that night. I went to Brett's house and walked the route Ryan would have taken home. It was a quiet neighborhood, the kind where nothing ever happened. As I walked, I followed the path to his house, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. It was like he had just disappeared into the night. I started to lose hope. The guilt was eating me alive. I couldn't stop thinking about that night. Years passed and life went on. I graduated, went to college, and tried to move on, but Ryan was always in the back of my mind. I couldn't let go of the hope that one day he would come back or that we would find out what happened. Then, one day, I got a call from Ryan's mom. We had stayed in touch over the years. They had found Ryan's wallet and phone near a river a few miles from Brett's house. I knew it wasn't good news, but at least it was something. They searched the area but didn't find anything else. It was like Ryan had vanished all over again. The police said the case would remain open, but I knew the chances of finding him alive were slim. I tried to accept it, to move on, but it was hard. I still think about him all the time. I wonder what happened to him, if he's out there somewhere or if he's gone forever. It's just so hard to accept that someone can vanish without a trace.